How do you feel about seeing Robyn after just everything?
Well, our last interaction was really weird.
Yeah.
Just when we were trying to figure out everything with the way that the property was divided. I think the issue was getting our names put on the appropriate pieces of properties. I mean, there was a lot of conversation surrounding that, and I don't know why it couldn't just be signed on.
The sister-spouse's environment just transformed, completely reversed, and Robyn Brown is at the focus of the most explosive location controversy this household has ever perceived. While everyone accepted Meri was the difficult one, maintaining up the Coyote Pass transaction, revelation evidence has emerged that discloses the reality was far more threatening than anyone envisioned. Public documentation don't fabricate, and what they're displaying us about Robyn's function in the Coyote Pass location separation is completely astonishing. For periods, the audience observed as Kody and Robyn presented Meri as the problematic previous spouse who wouldn't cooperate, the stubborn woman causing postponements and creating everything complicated. But the genuine narrative, Robyn was the one performing activities behind the segments, utilizing her execution as an instrument of domination. Sources proximate to the circumstance disclose that while Kody executed location documentation on January 17th, and Meri and Janelle both executed their portions in mid-January, Robyn anticipated until March 26th to contribute her execution. That's over 2 periods of intentional postponement, while everyone else had currently accomplished their portion. 2 periods of Robyn maintaining the complete transaction captive while publicly preserving her innocent casualty story. The suggestions here are completely mind-transforming. This wasn't some administrative oversight or arrangement disagreement. This was calculated control at its finest, and it reveals everything we believed we understood about Robyn's function in this household's destruction. While she positioned in furniture conversations asserting she consistently performed in Meri's optimal interests, she was simultaneously utilizing her legal authority to dominate the complete process. Industry internal sources propose this postponement approach might have been associated to compelling Meri into executing non-disclosure agreements. Contemplate about it. If Robyn refuses to execute until Meri concurs to certain conditions, Meri possesses no selection but to comply or risk misplacing her legitimate portion of the location she assisted purchase. It's financial compulsion disguised as legal procedure. What causes this even more infuriating is how Robyn and Kody invested periods reproaching Meri for every postponement, every complication, every instance of disappointment in the location separation process. They created her the antagonist in their story, while Robyn was literally the individual preventing the transaction from proceeding forward. The psychological control here is completely astonishing. Behind secured portals, individuals are declaring Robyn's execution activities disclose her genuine nature as the controller of this complete operation. While she presents herself as the timid, overwhelmed spouse who just desires tranquility, she's genuinely organizing elaborate authority actions that would cause experienced property commercial controllers impressed. The circumstance that these documentation are currently public signifies Robyn can no longer conceal behind her cautiously constructed casualty character. The evidence is correct there in transparent contrast, displaying precisely who was genuinely causing difficulties and who was attempting to proceed forward. Meri's confirmation is complete, but the damage to Robyn's reputation might be irreparable. But that was just the commencement of this location controversy that would reveal the genuine depths of Robyn's control. The conclusive evidence that completely demolishes Robyn's innocent performance originates directly from official location documentation, and the timeline is completely condemning. While Robyn invested periods on recording device discussing about equity and cooperation, she was systematically sabotaging the complete Coyote Pass transaction behind the segments. Here's what genuinely occurred. According to documented legal submissions that can't be disputed or transformed, Janelle executed her portion of the location transfer documentation on January 9th. Meri pursued suit on January 15th, despite allegedly being the difficult one, causing all the difficulties. Kody contributed his execution on January 17th, completing what ought to have been a direct process. But Robyn, she anticipated until March 26th to conclusively execute off on the transaction. That's 70 days of intentional postponement. While the other 3 individuals had currently accomplished everything required of them, 70 days of Robyn maintaining the complete transaction captive while preserving her casualty story on recording device. What causes this timeline even more explosive is that during those 70 days, Robyn and Kody were actively reproaching Meri for every postponement and complication. They presented her as unreasonable, difficult, and reluctant to cooperate. When the public documentation display, Meri was genuinely one of the initial individuals to execute the necessary documentation. The level of psychological control here is completely astonishing. Sources proximate to the circumstance disclosed that without Robyn's execution, the location transfer couldn't be legally documented, signifying the transaction was completely halted until she determined to cooperate. This provided her unprecedented influence over the complete process, and reports propose she utilized every moment of those 70 days to extract maximum advantage from the circumstance. Behind secured portals, individuals are declaring Robyn's postponement techniques were associated to compelling additional agreements and concessions from the other individuals. When you dominate the concluding execution required to complete a multi-million currency location transaction, you essentially maintain all the resources. Industry internal sources propose this. Variety of execution control is a traditional authority action, utilized individuals who comprehend precisely how to exploit legal processes. The most infuriating portion is how Robyn presented herself during this complete period. While she was intentionally halting the transaction, she manifested in furniture conversations discussing about desiring everything to be equitable and fair. She communicated about anticipating for tranquil resolutions while simultaneously utilizing her execution as an instrument against her previous sister spouses. Statement on the Avenue proposes that Robyn's March 26th execution date wasn't arbitrary. Sources theorize she conclusively executed only following obtaining whatever additional agreements or concessions she was demanding behind the segments. The timing indicates this was a calculated approach, not some innocent administrative postponement. This timeline completely reconstructs everything we believed we understood about the location separation conflict. Robyn wasn't the cooperative spouse attempting to cause circumstances function while experiencing with difficult previous spouses. She was the individual causing the postponements, generating the complications, and then reproaching everyone else for the disorder she organized. But the execution activities were just the surface of Robyn's control master intention. The explosive timeline disclosure completely confirms Meri Brown in the most dramatic manner conceivable, demonstrating that everything Kody and Robyn declared about her being difficult was pure control. For years, the audience observed as Meri was presented as the problematic previous spouse who couldn't just cooperate and proceed onward. But the documented evidence communicates a completely alternative narrative. Meri executed her portion of the location documentation on January 15th, creating her one of the initial executors in the complete process. While Robyn was occupied performing execution activities for over 2 periods, Meri had currently accomplished everything legally required of her to proceed the transaction forward. The woman they reproached for every postponement was genuinely attempting to cooperate from day one. Reports are manifesting that Meri's determination to labor exclusively through her attorney wasn't stubbornness or vindictiveness. It was pure personal safeguarding against precisely the variety of control Robyn was organizing behind the segments. Sources proximate to the circumstance disclosed that Meri identified initial on that experiencing directly with Kody and Robyn would result in financial compulsion and legal intimidation. The most infuriating portion is how Meri was psychologically controlled throughout this complete process. While she was executing documentation in January and laboring through appropriate legal channels, Kody and Robyn were communicating anyone who would attend that Meri was being difficult and causing unnecessary conflict. They created her the antagonist while Robyn was literally preventing the transaction from proceeding. Industry internal sources propose Meri's attorney initial method presumably rescued her from misplacing significant finances in this location separation. When you're experiencing with individuals who will utilize execution postponements as influence, possessing legal representation isn't alternative. It's essential, safeguarding against financial control. Behind secured portals, individuals are declaring Meri's confirmation proceeds beyond just the execution timeline. The complete story about her being uncooperative has been completely destroyed by these public documentation. She wasn't maintaining up the transaction, she wasn't generating unnecessary complications, and she wasn't being unreasonable about the separation process. Statement on the Avenue proposes that Meri theorized Robyn was performing activities all throughout, which clarifies why she insisted on laboring through attorneys despite Kody and Robyn's tension to manage circumstances directly. Sources theorize that Meri's legal association advised her to document everything and prevent direct negotiations because they could perceive the control techniques being employed. What causes Meri's confirmation even more authoritative is how it reveals the systematic psychological control she endured throughout this process. Every duration Kody and Robyn complained about postponements or difficulties, they were genuinely complaining about consequences of Robyn's own intentional halting techniques. They generated the difficulties and then reproached Meri for the disorder they organized. The disclosure that Meri was one of the initial executors while Robyn anticipated over 2 periods completely reverses the complete story. Meri wasn't the difficult previous spouse causing difficulties. She was the responsible individual attempting to conclude commercial properly, while Robyn performed control activities with everyone's financial futures. But Meri's confirmation revealed an even more dark reality about Robyn's domination techniques. The most threatening aspect of Robyn's execution postponement approach becomes transparent when you associate it to the non-disclosure agreement tension that Meri confronted during this complete location separation. Catastrophe. Sources proximate to the circumstance disclose that Robyn's 70-day execution holdout wasn't just about domination. It was about influencing Meri into quietness about what genuinely occurred in this household. Industry internal sources propose that Robyn's refusal to execute until March 26th was directly associated to compelling Meri to concur to additional conditions beyond the location separation itself. When you dominate the concluding execution required to complete a multi-million currency transaction, you can essentially maintain someone's financial future captive until they concur to your demands. Reports are manifesting that during those 70 days of postponement, there were intense behind the segments. Negotiations about what Meri would be permitted to communicate publicly about her experiences in the Brown household. Statement on the Avenue proposes that Robyn and Kody weren't just separating location. They were attempting to purchase Meri's quietness about years of financial control and emotional mistreatment. The timing here is completely explosive when you consider Meri's previous suggestions about composing a comprehensive publication. Remember that mysterious Instagram submission where Meri proposed her narrative would eventually be communicated? Sources theorize that Robyn's execution activities were particularly designed to prevent that publication from ever perceiving illumination. Behind secured portals, individuals are declaring the NDA tension clarifies why Meri suddenly ceased discussing about revealing the household's confidential information. One day, she was suggesting at disclosing everything, and then suddenly she was above it all and proceeding forward, tranquilly. That dramatic transformation in manner proposes something significant occurred during Robyn's execution postponement period. What causes this association even more condemning is how it discloses Robyn's genuine priorities during the location separation. While she asserted to desire equity and fairness for everyone, she was genuinely utilizing her legal influence to safeguard herself and Kody from capability, humiliation, or legal revelation that Meri's narrative might contain. Accusations are emerging that Robyn's execution postponement was essentially financial compulsion disguised as legal procedure. Sources proximate to the circumstance propose that Meri was presented with a selection between receiving her equitable portion of the Coyote Pass proceeds and preserving her capacity to communicate her narrative publicly. That's not negotiation, that's control at its most calculated. The most infuriating portion is how Robyn preserved her innocent casualty story throughout this complete compulsion process. While she was allegedly utilizing execution postponements to compel Meri into quietness, she manifested on recording device discussing about desiring tranquil resolutions and performing in everyone's optimal interests. Industry specialists propose this variety of execution control associated to NDA tension represents a sophisticated comprehension of legal influence that contradicts Robyn's helpless spouse character completely. This wasn't unintentional postponement. This was strategic financial compulsion designed to dominate the story around the household's destruction. But the NDA Association disclosed an even more troubling configuration in Robyn's control guidebook. The most ridiculous portion of Kody and Robyn's control approach becomes transparent when you examine Kody's assertions about attempting concealed arrangements to transfer Coyote Pass without Meri's authorization. Legal specialists are labeling his declarations complete fabrication, and the timeline demonstrates he was creating narratives to safeguard Robyn from responsibility for her execution postponements. According to location regulation specialists, Kody's assertions about being capable to compel a transaction without Meri's contribution were legally impossible from the commencement. Meri maintained legal interest in multiple portions of the Coyote Pass location, creating any transaction without her authorization completely unenforceable. Yet, Kody repeatedly proposed he could circumvent Meri completely if she didn't cooperate with his demands. Sources proximate to the circumstance disclose that Kody's concealed arrangement story was particularly designed to cause Janelle and Meri experience pressured into accepting whatever conditions he and Robyn were presenting by asserting he possessed alternatives that didn't require their contribution. He was essentially fabricating with resources he didn't genuinely maintain. The most infuriating aspect is how Kody utilized these impossible legal scenarios to validate Robyn's execution postponements. While Robyn was maintaining up the complete transaction for 70 days, Kody was communicating individuals. He was investigating alternatives to circumvent the postponements that Robyn herself was generating. Industry internal sources propose Kody's legal fabrication performed multiple purposes in their approach. Initial, it created the other individual's experience like they possessed no influence in negotiations. Subsequent, it provided concealment for Robyn's intentional postponements by proposing alternatives were being investigated. Third, it permitted them to dominate the story about who was genuinely causing difficulties. Behind secured portals, individuals are declaring Kody's concealed arrangement assertions disclosed just how frantic he was to prevent acquiring obligation for Robyn's control techniques. Rather than recognize that Robyn was halting the process, he generated elaborate, fabricated scenarios where he was the proactive one attempting to proceed circumstances forward. Statement on the Avenue proposes that Kody's legal impossibilities were so evident that even Janelle perceived through them immediately. When someone proposes they can transfer location without required executions, they're either completely ignorant about property commercial regulation or they're intentionally fabricating to generate tension. The timeline causes Kody's deception even more transparent. While he was asserting to investigate concealed arrangements in January and February, Robyn hadn't even executed the documentation that would cause any transaction conceivable. He was generating fabricated urgency around postponements that Robyn was intentionally organizing. What causes this legal fabrication specifically damaging to Kody's credibility is how it reveals his willingness to fabricate to his own household members about serious financial matters.
And they had sold the property out from under you, would you be able to speak about it?
No. It breaks my heart that it has come to this. I didn't think that these people would try to do this to me. Like, was there not any parts of us that were human?
When you're creating legal capabilities to control location negotiations, you've transformed from mere disagreement into genuine deception territory. But Kody's impossible legal assertions were just concealing for an even more systematic configuration of financial domination activities. The Coyote Pass location separation controversy discloses the most sophisticated financial domination operation Robyn and Kody have ever organized, utilizing legal procedures as instruments against their previous household members. What manifested to be straightforward location negotiations was genuinely an elaborate scheme to preserve authority over individuals who were attempting to escape their control. Reports are manifesting that Robyn and Kody's domination activities transformed far beyond execution postponements and into systematic financial intimidation designed to compel compliance with their demands. Sources proximate to the circumstance disclose that every aspect of the location separation was transformed into instruments to extract maximum advantage while preserving their casualty stories. The 8 acres versus 2 acres controversy becomes even more infuriating when observed through this perspective of financial domination. While Robyn and Kody were asserting they merited the majority of the location because of household dimension distinctions, they were simultaneously utilizing execution postponements to prevent anyone from challenging their arbitrary separation formula. Industry internal sources propose that Robyn's execution postponement approach was particularly timed to generate financial tension on the other individuals. When you're experiencing with a multi-million currency location transaction, 70 days of postponement can generate significant transporting expenditures, legal compensations, and opportunity misplacements that compel individuals into accepting unfavorable conditions. Behind secured portals, individuals are declaring Robyn comprehended precisely how to utilize her legal position to extract concessions that possess nothing to accomplish with equitable location separation. By dominating the concluding execution required to complete the transaction, she could essentially maintain everyone else's financial futures captive until they concurred to her additional demands. Statement on the Avenue proposes that Robyn's financial domination activities extended to controlling the timeline of when alternative household members would receive their proceeds from the transaction. Sources theorize that her execution postponements were designed to ensure she and Kody received their finances initial, departing the others exposed to further control. The most calculated aspect of their domination approach was how they presented these financial activities as legitimate commercial negotiations. While Robyn was utilizing execution postponements as influence, she manifested on recording device discussing about desiring equitable outcomes for everyone involved. The disconnection between her activities and her public declarations is completely astonishing. Accusations are emerging that Robyn's financial domination techniques represent years of practice controlling household resources to benefit herself and Kody at everyone else's expenditure. The Coyote Pass circumstance wasn't an isolated incident. It was the culmination of an extended configuration of utilizing legal and financial procedures as instruments against household members. What causes these domination activities specifically insidious is how they were disguised as protective measures for Robyn's offspring. By asserting she required to obtain her household's financial future, Robyn could validate any level of control or postponement as motherly concern rather than calculated desire. But Robyn's financial domination activities were just the observable surface of a much more profound control demonstration. Robyn Brown's exhibition during the Coyote Pass location separation represents the most sophisticated control demonstration we've ever observed on Sister Wives, combining casualty stories, financial compulsion, and calculated postponements into one devastating approach designed to preserve domination over her previous sister wives. The brilliance of Robyn's method was how she succeeded to organize 70 days of execution postponements while simultaneously presenting herself as the cooperative individual who just desired equity for everyone. Sources proximate to the circumstance disclose that Robyn's capability to preserve her innocent character while utilizing financial influence represents years of practice control disguised as helplessness. Industry internal sources propose that Robyn's control approach relied intensely on psychologically controlling the other individuals about who was genuinely causing postponements and complications. While she was literally preventing the location transaction from proceeding, she manifested in furniture conversations, communicating disappointment about how difficult the process had become, never recognizing her own function in generating the difficulties. The most insidious aspect of Robyn's demonstration was how she utilized her offspring as emotional protections for her financial control techniques. By presenting her execution postponements as safeguarding her household's future, she could validate any level of obstruction or compulsion as motherly concern rather than calculated desire. Behind secured portals, individuals are declaring Robyn's control techniques represent a sophisticated comprehension of psychological tension that contradicts her helpless spouse character completely. When you can organize execution, postponements, reproach others for the disorder you generate, and preserve casualty condition throughout the complete process, you're operating at specialist-level control. Statement on the Avenue proposes that Robyn's demonstration extended beyond just the location separation into systematic story domination, designed to transform public understanding about who was genuinely at responsibility for the household's destruction. Every declaration she created was cautiously constructed to preserve her innocent representation while subtly reproaching others for difficulties she organized. Reports are manifesting that Robyn's control approach included timing her cooperation to maximize tension on other individuals. Sources theorize that her March 26th execution wasn't arbitrarily postponed, it was strategically timed to extract maximum concessions from individuals who were financially exposed due to her own halting techniques. The most calculated element of Robyn's method was how she transformed legal procedures into instruments, the process itself to generate confusion about who maintained genuine authority in the circumstance while manifesting to submit to attorneys and appropriate procedures. She was genuinely utilizing those identical procedures as instruments of financial compulsion against her previous household members. What causes Robyn's control demonstration specifically damaging is how it discloses her genuine function in the household's destruction over the years. This wasn't a woman who was overwhelmed by polygamy conflict. This was someone who comprehended precisely how to utilize that conflict to preserve domination and extract advantages for herself and Kody. But Robyn's control demonstration was just establishing the foundation for the most explosive location deception yet to be disclosed. The most outrageous aspect of Robyn and Kody's Coyote Pass control becomes transparent when you revisit their original location separation scheme that provided them 8 of the 14 comprehensive acres while Meri was presented minimal 2 acres. The recent execution controversy demonstrates this wasn't just unfair separation. It was calculated acquisition disguised as household negotiation. Remember that astonishing instance when Robyn and Kody positioned across from Meri at that outdoor table, with direct expressions clarifying why they merit the majority of the territory? Kody validated their 8-acre comprehension by asserting Meri only possessed 1 offspring, while he possessed 18 offspring, who required space for future development. The boldness was astonishing even then, but the execution postponement controversy causes it even more infuriating. Sources proximate to the circumstance disclose that Robyn was comprehensively supportive of this lopsided separation scheme, despite her recent assertions about consistently performing in Meri's optimal interests. During that outdoor table confrontation, Robyn was observably agitated when Meri examined why they were acquiring over half the location for themselves, even operating off expressing emotional distress when challenged about the evident unfairness. Industry internal sources propose that Robyn's emotional deterioration during the location separation examination wasn't genuine distress about equity. It was calculated control designed to prevent possessing to support their indefensible position. When you can't validate acquiring 8 acres while presenting someone else 2, generating conflict and performing casualty becomes your only alternative. The most insulting portion of their separation scheme was how they presented Meri's smaller allocation as generous consideration for her future construction intentions. They understood Meri was departing the household and possessed no intention of constructing on Coyote Pass. Yet, they simulated to be accommodating her requirements while genuinely acquiring her legitimate portion of the location. Behind secured portals, individuals are declaring Robyn's assistance for the 8 versus 2 acre separation discloses her genuine priorities throughout the complete location circumstance. She wasn't interested in equity or fairness. She was concentrated on obtaining maximum financial advantage for herself, Kody at Meri's expenditure. Statement on the Avenue proposes that Robyn's recent execution postponements were directly associated to ensuring this unfair separation remained unchallenged. By dominating the timing of the location transfer, she could prevent Meri from possessing legal opportunities to contest the evidently lopsided allocation of territory. What causes the location separation deception, specifically egregious, is how Robyn and Kody utilized Meri's emotional exposure during the household separation to advance through conditions that no reasonable individual would accept. They acquired advantage of someone who was currently traumatized by years of neglect and mistreatment to acquire her financial resources. The disclosure that Robyn then postponed executing for 70 days following obtaining this unfair separation contributes insult to damage in the most spectacular manner conceivable. She received her 8 acres, compelled Meri to accept 2, and then still utilize execution activities to extract additional concessions from the process. But the location separation deception was just arranging the foundation for Robyn's most devastating legal conflict approach. Meri's determination to compel all communication through her attorney wasn't stubbornness or vindictiveness. It was the most intelligent, protective action she could have created against Robyn and Kody's sophisticated financial control movement. The execution postponement controversy demonstrates that Meri's legal association presumably rescued her from misplacing thousands of currency to their compulsion techniques. Sources proximate to the circumstance disclose that Meri's attorney initial method terrified Robyn and Kody because it eliminated their capability to utilize emotional control and psychological control to extract unfavorable agreements. When you're experiencing with individuals who will transform into instruments, household relationships for financial acquisition, legal representation is an alternative. It's essential safeguarding. Industry internal sources propose that Meri's legal approach compelled Robyn and Kody to conduct their control through official channels where everything would be documented and capability challengeable in legal proceedings. This clarifies why they were so disappointed about possessing to experience with Meri's attorney rather of pressuring her directly. The most revealing aspect of their response to Meri's legal safeguarding was how they presented it as unnecessary conflict and complication. Behind secured portals, individuals are declaring Robyn and Kody's complaints about attorney involvement were genuinely complaints about misplacing their capability to control and compel Meri into accepting whatever conditions they demanded. Statement on the Avenue proposes that Meri's legal association advised her initial on to prevent direct negotiations because they could perceive the control techniques being employed. When your opponents are utilizing execution postponements as influence and creating legally impossible threats about concealed arrangements, you require professional safeguarding against their financial conflict. Reports are manifesting that Robyn's execution postponement approach was particularly designed to generate legal expenditures and tension that would compel Meri to abandon her attorney safeguarding and negotiate directly. By extending the process over 70 days, Robyn was essentially attempting to cause legal representation too expensive for Meri to preserve. What causes Meri's legal conflict approach so brilliant is how it revealed Robyn and Kody's genuine intentions throughout the location separation process. Their disappointment about experiencing with attorneys disclosed they weren't interested in equitable negotiations. They desired direct access to control and tension Meri into accepting unfavorable conditions. The most fulfilling aspect of Meri's attorney approach was how it prevented Robyn and Kody from utilizing their execution postponements to extract additional concessions beyond the location separation itself. With legal representation safeguarding her interests, Meri couldn't be pressured into executing NDAs or other agreements that would benefit her controllers. Behind secured portals, individuals are declaring Meri's determination to labor exclusively through attorneys presumably rescued her from executing away capacities and resources that extended far beyond Coyote Pass. When you're experiencing with individuals who observe legal procedures as instruments, you require professional safeguarding against their financial compulsion. But Meri's legal conflict approach disclosed the most significant representation about Robyn's function in destroying this household. The Coyote Pass execution controversy represents the conclusive evidence that conclusively reveals Robyn Brown's genuine function as the designer of the sister spouse's household. destruction, disclosing a sophisticated control movement that spans years of calculated psychological and financial conflict against her previous sister spouses. What emerges from the 70-day execution postponement timeline is a transparent representation of someone who comprehended precisely how to transform into instruments legal processes, financial influence, and casualty stories to preserve domination over individuals who were attempting to escape her effect. This wasn't unintentional disorder. This was systematic destruction disguised as household conflict. Sources proximate to the circumstance disclose that Robyn's control approach during the location separation represents the culmination of years of practice utilizing similar techniques to dominate household resources and relationships. The execution activities weren't an isolated incident. They were the concluding demonstration of control techniques she'd been perfecting throughout her matrimony to Kody. Industry internal sources propose that Robyn's capability to organize financial compulsion while preserving her innocent character discloses someone who comprehended the psychology of mistreatment far superior than anyone comprehended. When you can generate difficulties, reproach others for the disorder you caused, and emerge as the casualty of situations you organized, you're operating at specialist-level control. The most damaging disclosure is how Robyn utilized her offspring as emotional protections for her financial control techniques throughout the complete process. By presenting every postponement, every demand, and every unreasonable position as safeguarding her household's future, she could validate any level of cruelty toward her previous sister spouses as motherly concern. Behind secured portals, individuals are declaring Robyn's systematic destruction of the household relationships was designed to ensure she and Kody emerged with maximum financial advantage, while everyone else endured the emotional and economic expenditures of the household separation. Every control performed the ultimate objective of consolidating authority and resources. Statement on the Avenue proposes that Robyn's genuine function in the household's destruction becomes transparent when you examine her activities, rather than her cautiously constructed public declarations. While she communicated about desiring equity and cooperation, she was systematically undermining every opportunity for genuine reconciliation or fair resolution. The execution postponement controversy demonstrates that Robyn was never the overwhelmed spouse experiencing difficulty with polygamy conflict that she portrayed herself to be. She was the calculating designer of that conflict, utilizing it as concealment for financial control and psychological conflict against women who trusted her. What causes Robyn's function in the household destruction so devastating is how it discloses that years of apparent household malfunction were genuinely the result of intentional sabotage designed to benefit her at everyone else's expenditure. The disorder wasn't unintentional. It was strategically generated and preserved. The Coyote Pass location controversy isn't just about property commercial separation. It's about revealing the genuine nature of someone who invested years destroying a household while presenting herself as its innocent casualty. Robyn's execution activities conclusively disclose the controller behind the disguise. Submit your considerations below. Approve, register, and remain observant. The subsequent recording is anticipating, and you won't desire to overlook what's approaching next.